Whenever you are ready.
Alright guys, I'm gonna start it from scratch so in case you guys actually wanna create an Angular project, you'll know how, so I don't just start coding and you guys have no idea how to set it up.
This is
Watch
much
it.
appreciated.
Yeah. So I'm using Angular and it has an Angular CLI, so it has a lot of built-in commands. So to create a project you just do ng new and I'm just gonna call this ACM Angular. Set my style equal to CSS.
And is ng just the shorthand for any kind of Angular prompt?
Correct. And then routing we'll get into. So this does take a while because it's downloading node modules, which is a lot of built-in components that people have already made. So that's included in here. So while we're waiting for that, I will go into Spring as well.
Someone's already. I don't blame
So browse, I'll just put it on the desktop.
That is terrible file management.
I hate you.
He doesn't know how to manage his files.
Mm-hmm.
You should tell stories in between like the loading screens, like what happened when you went down to whatever the business trip was.
Oh, well, I almost got to meet Jeff Bezos, but he got sick actually.
Does he have the corona?
I'd hope not. It'd still be worth it, but I don't even care.
Be pretty neat. Hey, give me some money.
That's right. I'm
Can you
like,
buy me a Can you buy me a Chipotle?
yes.
Like how that's the first
You
person.
mean like a franchise?
That'd be.
Yes.
Then I could just
Or
get free
yeah.
Chipotle.
Is that how that works? I guess that is how that works.
Yeah, if I own a franchise, I can just get whatever I want.
What if the people refuse to acknowledge the fact that I own the franchise? Like you're lying. You don't actually. You're the wrong person. Show us some identification.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, you might end up in a Nigerian prince situation with all this money and no one to give it to.
Ooh.
Oh, sad times.
I think my computer's gonna take off.
Yeah, that's.
This node modules is really killing it.
It's because you're using Eclipse.
That too.
Trash.
IntelliJ.
So does Angular do a bunch of scaffolding and templating when you start a new project?
Yep. It's a lot better than React. My
Nice.
personal opinion.
Don't tell Joey.
Yeah, I was hoping Joey was in here, but it's okay.
I'm so sad.
I gotta make a schedule.
I haven't had a bald joke in forever.
I haven't talked to Joey in forever.
Yeah. Yeah,
All
I need to start yeah, go ahead.
Um, loads. So, this is the default. I'm pretty sure if you have Spring already installed, which you can install it by just going help and then the Eclipse Marketplace, and you can install Spring, and then this will show up. So we're gonna create new Spring starter project. ACM demo. We'll go with Gradle, the Maven, because Maven's trash.
What is Gradle?
It's how it builds your project. It helps when you're able to deploy it to like online web. It packages you, and when you want to install like external components, you'll see in my build Gradle file. I'll show you. So some things we'll need: REST repositories, storing web, and web services. Hit finish. Start building our project. So this is the build.gradle file. So if you want like different, I guess, services, there's a lot of built-in stuff you can download. There's like a JWT, there's security, there's different repositories that have already been built that you can just put in your Gradle file and it'll be attached to your external dependencies. So you'll be able to use them in your project. Maven kind of doesn't, to me, doesn't have a clean way of doing that. They use like a pom.xml file, which I don't like a whole lot.
Yeah, the Maven is
A personal,
there's a lot more stuff going on.
right?
It's a lot more clutter. It's kind of harder to read.
This node module is just gonna kill my computer.
Here.
So, have any of you guys ever coded in Spring or Angular?
Besides me,
Besides you, Luke.
I did like some small Angular projects years and years ago, but I don't remember any.
Nice.
I remember thinking it was very complicated.
Really? I don't think it's awful. I mean, Luke was able to understand it.
Oh my gosh.
you're saying that I'm not able to understand complicated things.
Sam, you're getting me and Luke confused. Come on, hold up.
Oh, don't worry. Wait till I get to later in this presentation. You'll like it, Josh.
Oh no.
No.
Luke will like it too.
Yeah. Well.
I was at work and I was ohming some stuff out to make sure all the connections were valid. And
You were what? You were what?
ohming.
You were.
Like
I don't know what that is.
Oh, it's just you switch the multimeter, multimeter to check for resistance, and then it's like basically you're putting one end on one end of a wire and the other end on the other end of a wire and making sure there's no breaks. But it's this board full of pins, and the wires are all behind it. It's like a tricked out breadboard, and so, but I'm following the schematic and I'm highlighting as I go to make sure to keep track of the ones that I've checked already, all of the different wires. And Nick walks up and he's like, "Oh, I see you're making some good progress there, right?" And he's like, "You are writing down all of the pins that you have checked on the front of the board, right? So that you know that you've checked all of them." And I was like, "No." He's like, "Well, what happens if there are extra pins in there that we're not supposed to have in there?" And I was like, "No, no." And so I'm freaking out that I'm gonna have to redo 5 hours of work. And then he told me he was joking. I was like, "Oh, you're so."
Well, look on the bright side. At least you're getting.
Yes, I'm okay with that. All right.
Okay. So it loaded finally. So
Sweet.
you can change this view. So we'll just create a new package for our controllers. Maybe. So we'll call this just
Not a
data control.
package.
Good call. So we'll do com.controllers. pull this out.
Hey, look, it's the new co-chair. Round of applause.
Sorry, Seth, you missed the voting, so you weren't able to reject.
I don't know if that's how that works.
You'll be working under Obama.
Excuse me?
I didn't know what his last name was, so I just put Obama.
I don't want to be co-chair. Who's co-chair?
You?
Right now it's a four-way tie between option one, Big Chungus, but actually Seth, Bernie Sanders,
I didn't even put my name in.
and Seth Hancock. It's because there was write-ins.
I'm voting then.
Oh yeah, you can do that.
All right, I don't want to interrupt anything. Keep going.
It's alright. I'm waiting for my eclipse to not explode.
I vote Jared co-chair.
Nice. Good stuff.
I will second that vote.
No, vote for Seth Hancock. And vote Obama for chair.
Running, you can't vote for me.
Well, I did.
Sam, you need a new computer.
Dude, I know. Dude, it's my node modules. That's probably taking easy.
Why don't you give us some like something of what we can expect to be able to do with Angular? Why don't you give us some exposition here? Show off the Marks app a little bit.
Dude, if I have this running and I try to serve my Marks app, my
Oh.
computer will explode.
That's true.
I'm not even kidding. Let's see. So what I'm gonna do is create a Spring Boot application, and then show you how to use it using Postman to test it, and then how to call that endpoint from Angular from the front end. And then once that's in place, if we have time, I'll show you how to get Spring communicating with the database.
Hey.
Okay. About time. So we'll create a new class. We'll call it just data controller. And then I don't know if you guys can see that.
Public class.
So anytime you make a REST controller, you of course need this annotation called REST controller, which allows you to make this callable, I guess, and allows you to have access to this get mapping and post mapping and all that. And this will be the endpoint that we'll call. We'll make it accept an ID. Public static allied string. We'll call it get ACM member. And then since we're accepting an ID in our params, we had to have an at path variable in here, which will pull that from the URL for us. And then we give it the value we're looking for, which in this case is ID. And then we'll just have it be a string. We'll import these. Make this not a single quotes. Okay, then we'll do something simple like ID dot equals 1. Then we'll return, say Samuel, and then otherwise return Josh.
Or you go to stick with you, picking your number one.
Then to run it, you go to run configurations. You're going to want to go down to Spring Boot app. We'll name it ACM demo. you pick your project, you search for your application file, hit apply, and run.
Look at the text start. How cool.
Um,
What are we doing?
So is Spring basically just like a Java server framework?
Correct. I have the wrong GRE. That's good.
Shame.
So basically, Seth, this is like the back end code. This will like help function like the front end code, all the pretty front end stuff.
So
This is the
it's gonna get the data for the front end, like the stuff we want to display.
Correct.
Okay.
this is actually Angular. Well, obviously, but
Okay, so our Spring Boot application is running, so we'll be able to access it on port 8080. So if we go to Postman, you guys still see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
this
Go
door.
to Postman, we'll make a new request, get request.
What's Postman?
It allows you to make API calls.
What is an API call?
So it's how like servers communicate with your client. So they expose these REST endpoints, and then from the UI you can call those to get back data. Like
It's
about
like,
instead,
it's like, you know how like when you call a method, it can return something.
Mm-hmm.
correct. If I go
So
to
an API call is basically like calling a method that exists in an entirely different program on a different computer and then getting a response.
Okay.
So you might like call an API for country information, and it's just like get countries, and then it'll return you a list of countries or something like that as an example.
Yeah, like when we were doing the Olga project, an extension that basically just called a method of the API and it returned information on like when the Browns last won or something like that.
yep. So yeah, Postman just helps it with easier. You can actually just go in the browser and it'll return it for you. So that's all Postman does. You can
So
do it.
is Postman basically just like a user interface to make API calls then?
Yep, it's a lot cleaner. And then it lets you set bodies in here when it's like a post call.
Cool. So does it have like a JSON reader and stuff like that then?
Yep, so if you go to post body and you do raw, you can set your JSON.
Nice.
Yep, it's very nice. So then when it's one, it returns my name. Anything else, it'll return Josh. So that's pretty nice. No modules is still downloading, so I guess we'll do the database part.
Hello, SQL. I haven't seen you in forever.
This is probably a different breed for Seth. So we'll create schema, ACM data.
What is a schema?
It's just your database.
Kind of
So
looks
my
like some software that I use, but it's called Orchestra. It's a SQL database, but you don't do queries or anything like that.
So then we'll create a table in our ACM data. We'll just call it ACM members. And then we'll add some columns. We'll do guess ID. Make it an int, not null. And then we'll have this be auto increment. First name.
I still can't decide if I like having like all of the SQL commands in caps or if I just like writing everything in lowercase.
I like caps. It's very nice.
I think caps is the convention, at least from what I've seen.
I don't know how well
Conventions were meant to be broken.
I don't know how well my previous co-op followed conventions. I don't understand. They used white backgrounds while they programmed. I'm like, who does
Oh god,
that?
that's like Migraine City.
That's disgusting.
Isn't that what you're doing,
Job. Well, this SQL doesn't have a built-in dark theme.
Well, that means they suck.
And then I guess we'll make our primary key our ID. Alright, if we run that, we should have a table in here now. Awesome. Okay, save our ID. And then I made some test data just to make our lives easier. Oh, did I spell it wrong? I did.
Like Josh's occupation.
I know, right?
That's not how my name is spelled.
Did I spell it wrong?
There's a space between Van and Dyke. Get it
Oh
right.
my gosh, are you
missed-
stupid?
you
We've
also
known
missed
him
the
for
John
like 30
Donne
years.
Okay, so we have data in our database now. Fantastic.
Wrong. That Zach person, that should be male nurse.
How
You have
come
to
I'm not in the database?
Yeah, how come
I'm
Jacob's
sorry. You want me to
Hey.
insert you, Jacob?
Do it.
Yes, please.
Okay.
he's the Kyle annoyer.
So what do you want
male
your job
nurse.
to be?
Male nurse.
Male nurse?
Male nurse. That should be his job.
Nurser?
Wait, he's a nail? He's a nail nurse?
He's nail. He's nail.
Oh shit.
Well, he knows how to use databases, but he doesn't know how to spell.
Okay. There
That's
you go,
okay.
Jacob. You're in there.
There we go.
Yay!
Okay. So now to communicate with the database, you had to have a connector between your Eclipse and your um, database. So we can go into our build.gradle and add an implementation. So I have custom jars that I created, so it makes my life easier. So I will. So I create a SQL jar so I can just pass in a query and it executes it for me. So paste those in there.
.jar. I like that.
I know, right? So then I can do a Gradle refresh and it'll restall my packages. Okay, and then you can check them by going down here. And you can see they're down here. So if we go back to here, we can have SQL client dot execute query. And then we'll just do select star from ACM data dot ACM members. And then we can do a where ID equals %s. And we'll put a string format up here. Alright, throws, and then we'll return this instead.
So
And
that's
we
just
got-
going to return the output of that query.
Yep, and then I have a thing that formats it for me, so I don't have to worry about it.
Where's it returning it to? Just the web
It-
page?
Yeah, that call. So when that gets called, it'll return it.
And it's determined by whatever you put in the URL.
Yeah, so well, here you'll see. I promise.
I'm just asking questions.
Well, that's fine.
It knows like a method.
Yes. So we'll call Luke. So if I pass ID 4, postman now should return me Luke. Then it'll have his data in here. Tell me his last name, his job, his first name, and his
No,
ID.
that's not my first name.
I hate you.
Wrong again.
God.
It's
You are,
true.
you are stupid. You are
I
very
hate you guys.
stupid.
He's not wrong.
Then I guess we can have like a simple check like ID dot equals what the
10 equals.
equals. We'll say all. You're gonna love this, Josh. You like my braces formatting?
I am just writhing in pain right now.
Why do you do that? It's so ugly.
I want to punch you in the face.
What?
He's using end of line braces, and it's
so
awful.
terrible.
No.
Garbage.
ID equals all. What?
Oh, also that, yes. I don't understand.
How does that
So
make sense?
if I pass in all here,
Oh, just the
it'll
word.
just return me everything in the
Oh,
database.
sweet.
I guess I thought ID should just be numbered. I guess it could be anything.
So if I do all, fantastic.
ID is the ID just a string? So
Doesn't
that
have
is.
to be string.
Oh, but you define it as a string? String ID?
Yeah.
Okay.
ID
If you
dot
do like an int as ID and then you pass it like all, will it like convert all to like its ASCII equivalent or some crap?
no, if I pass in a 1 here, it'll just be a string as a 1.
Oh, so if you do like one and then all, it'll just grab one and all, and it'll look for a thing, and then it won't know what to do with it because you haven't defined that.
Yes.
Oh.
Equals. They spell equals, right?
Yes.
I think.
Oh.
It's returning.
Oh yes. I don't miss those. Those are giant, stupid.
I mean, it's going into my else statement for some reason.
Because ID does not equal all.
Change it. Just change it to an integer for now.
Yeah, but I have something set up for that's pretty cool on Angular, but
Oh.
I guess we'll just return all of them by default right now.
Oh yeah, do that.
Very cool.
So confirm work.
Every time you relaunch that, it's restarting the server. Is that what it's doing?
Your local host, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it'll return all of them for you.
Is that just putting it in, like, is Postman putting it in JSON format?
You can view it differently. You can view raw if you really want to.
Okay.
Or preview.
Got it.
So this is in place now. Let's go back to Angular. Okay, so our new module is built. Go back to here. Users. I can find it. ACM Inc. Here. Okay, open folder. Angular. Okay. So, first thing we'll want to do is create a component.
What is a component, Sam?
You know, so I'm not answering that.
I want to know what a component is.
Yeah, other
I
people
know
might
I
want
know
to.
nothing of what's going on, Sam.
So, a component is something you can use to like define pages or use a component to be like a table,
Pages.
Like
a
a
web
page?
page.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So,
You
so
gotta break it
basically on a
down,
web-
man. He's from the controls engineering. It's totally different.
Totally different.
So we'll do ng.
I am
generate-
too. I gotta work to hold on.
We'll do ng generate component,
I feel you.
and I guess we'll name it home.
Yeah. So like when you go on a website, like you
That's a
see,
line of code. NGGC.
Yeah, you can
Those are
type it all out if
commands,
you like.
right?
Yeah, you can
yeah,
do generate component
Oh, okay, that's
home.
cool then.
The thing that's nice about doing it this way is it sets up your routing already. So
explain each of the parts of this component. Explain each of the parts, because
yeah, so when you generate your component like this, it'll import it into your module for you, so it's accessible within your whole app. If you did it by like just creating a folder, you would have to do this all manually. So it kind of does it for you,
So
and
it's
also
it's like you're using commands to 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 call and build pre-established things so you don't have to do it yourself, right?
yes,
Okay,
it
sweet.
sets up all your files for you,
yep.
basically.
And then even here, it'll set your style URLs, your template. Pretty nice. All right, so we'll do a simple call. So I guess this is where the routing comes in. So routing is like how it gets between pages. So you know how I don't know if you guys ever look at URLs that much, I guess, but you know how in URL it has like backslash home and then it can have other stuff after it,
Hmm.
which routes you to a different page. That's kind of what this routing does without refreshing the page. So if I do path home component colon, and I can do home component as an object. So now if I go to localhost 4200 and type in backslash home, it'll route me to that component.
And everything that you've done in that component. And that component contains all the HTML, all the CSS, all the
Yep.
pretty stuff that makes the front end look like the front end, stuff like that.
You hanging in there, Seth?
That's a definite maybe.
I think Seth should do a talk on PLCs.
Yes.
Oh yeah, you
I
could
can't really show you guys. I don't have any like software that I would be able to like just share my computer with and show you.
that is true.
Well, when you like would you like share the ladder logic stuff?
Yeah, I guess so. And everything like that, it's like you have to buy
I have
license.
software that I can
There's
send you
yeah,
that's free.
there's open source ladder logic software, which is
I'll
cool.
have to look into it.
Yeah.
If
I've
you
never
need
used
some,
it myself.
I have some. That's what I'm using to learn right now.
Okay,
So
it'd be cool to see.
actually, I haven't done any programming yet because I'm just learning all the basic commands. But alright.
Okay. So I did a serve. I might have broke something, but it's okay.
That's what I say every time I type a line of code.
Home component.
Cool.
So in our app component.html, you can get rid of all this. It's just the default. You have to have router outlet in order to navigate between pages. So, guess I'll so if I go to localhost 4200, there's nothing on our component. And if I type in backslash home, it'll tell us it went to our home page. So now we will actually make a call to the backend. So in order to do that, we need our HTTP client, which is part of our Angular, which is in our node modules. And then we're going to do private HTTP client.
HTTP client is like a class that we're gonna use to do what?
Make a call to our backend.
Okay.
That's how you call the API.
Okay.
So then, since we did that, we have to add it to our imports, the HTTP module. Pretty sure. Go back to our TypeScript. So we'll create a variable called member list, and that can be of type any. And then we're gonna do this .http.get, and this is gonna be our HTTP localhost 8080/acm. ID doesn't matter. Alright, look, here comes your favorite part. .subscribe. You guys can still hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay, just confirm. So then member list equals. So data returns us a list of maps. So you gotta do 0 dot. We'll do, I guess, just display the first name. Then we'll go to our home HTML. We'll do a bind, which allows us to access the variables in our TypeScript file.
That's the double brackets. That's what a bind is.
Yep.
And you just bind whatever the variable name is that you want to use.
Yes, to that.
HTML file.
Right.
Got it.
Variable in HTML.
That's not how that's supposed to work, but that's cool, right? HTML normally doesn't have variables, right?
It can.
Oh, it can.
I don't
Okay.
Okay. So then, since we'll get this error, this is because we're not allowed to cross origin with something we haven't approved. So you have to put at cross origin here. Isn't it nice with all these things built in?
That's the back end right here, right?
Correct.
So you're just
So-
programming the back end in this guy in Eclipse, and the front end's in the other one.
Yep.
Okay.
So now if we make that call, we'll see my name pop up. So this is actually pulled from the database.
Pretty sweet.
I know, right? My mind was blown when it worked.
So okay. This chunk of code here, right here. Explain to me what it's doing again, real quick.
So this right here is just like a postman call, kinda.
Okay.
We give it the URL we want to hit,
Mhm.
and this subscribe waits for that to respond.
Okay.
Once it responds, it will execute this line. If I had a line here, you'll notice that this will print out before the
So
subscribe.
the data that the subscribe is getting, is that going into the data variable?
Yep.
And then it's returned, and then what's being put into that variable is a table, right?
List.
A list, okay. And you're accessing
Here.
an item in
We
the
can look
list.
at this. This is what's nice about front end.
Okay.
So if you go in here, we'll put a breakpoint there. I'll refresh the page.
Like getting that URL is grabbing the data,
So then this data is what
which is
returns me
just
from
an
the
array
database.
position.
I'm sorry?
Where that data is just an array position.
Data is an object. It's a list of maps. This is the stuff pulled from the database.
So that's the array, that's the contents of the array.
Yep, so when I did data bracket 0, I looked at this one and I grabbed first name.
And then you're telling it to grab the first name. Okay.
Yep.
And the URL, you just hard coded that in, right? You're gonna,
Mhm.
in theory, you're gonna like just grab that from the URL box and you're gonna paste it there
In theory, yes.
when the time comes. Okay.
So, because we are short on time, I will copy and paste. So we're gonna create a new component. We'll call it ACM member card. Crap. Okay. So in our ACM member card, this is kind of where components kind of come into play and inputs and outputs of certain values you want to admit, I guess. So if we go into our TypeScript, so I guess I'll explain this real quick. So this is just another component that will take an input of a member as a first name, last name, and then a job. And then we actually don't need this one. And then it'll output an event when the card is clicked. So when the card is clicked, it'll emit this event with the name and the job of that what card you clicked on. We'll see this in action. We'll add some fancy styling too. Card. Um, colon expected.
Does it expect a semicolon at the end of card after the brace?
No, it shouldn't. Luke, you see anything?
I can't say
Oh.
CSS is my forte. I always just copied and pasted other CSS into mine because I didn't know how to do it ever.
That makes sense.
He's like, this explains a lot.
Dude, CSS is impossible.
Yeah, it's rough. I'm not a fan. Unknown property margin top.
See, and I rest my case.
Good.
CSS is very stupid.
Well, it's not seeing any of my styles. So I guess we'll live without the styles. So then in our HTML, I'll explain this when we get to it. No more people.
Wow.
Okay. We'll put this on the init now. In case you guys are wondering, the ng on init gets called when the page loads.
Oh, it's
So as
just
soon as the,
it's just the initial method, right? The
yep, so as
initialize.
soon as the as soon as the page loads, it will run this method.
We had init methods for our C# programs.
Fancy.
Oh yeah.
They would call like the authentication stuff.
So,
Awesome.
don't know why my styling isn't working.
It's not stylish enough.
I agree.
It doesn't have enough style.
CSS? Styled CSS? Is that what
It's like CSS.
Oh, I know what your problem is, Sam. It's Pride Month, so you need like a rainbow on your web page.
Yeah. Wonder if I can just name this a CSS file. Seriously. Okay, we'll live without the styles. So I'll go through and explain this now. So ng4 is like a for loop. I'm doing let data. So it's like a for each kinda.
Oh, okay.
So temp data is a list, and then for each one, it'll store each one in data. It'll create this app ACM card. So once it creates the card, it'll come to here because that's our selector, app ACM card. So then it'll take an input of member, which takes in a first name, last name, and a job. And then it'll run this HTML. It'll create a header on that card and put the job below it. So then if we go to the web page, we'll see the ng4 does for each one,
Oh,
prints out.
that's pretty cool.
And then I put a click on it. So say I click on my name. That's what the event emitter does. It outputs my job and my name.
Mm-hmm.
If I click on Zach8, it'll output Zach8.
Yeah. And then you could grab that and do whatever you want with it, probably, right?
Yeah, it's usually when like you're on a web page and say I want to click on a certain user and to send a message to, this would be used to like know their information of who and why to send it to. That's kind of what it's used for.
Gotcha.
Pretty sweet. I really wish my styling worked, but not sure why it's not. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that concludes it.
Nice.
Any questions?
So was this kind of what they started you off at Crown? Was mostly web development?
Yep.
Okay. That would explain why you know what you're doing with Angular.
Would explain why I
Yes.
know nothing.
That too.
It do be like that
It
sometimes.
do be like that. Why don't you go over like high level again, real quick? Just
Because,
everything
yeah,
that you
there's
did.
a lot of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff, yeah.
So where
So like you load that page you just loaded, go through like what each thing is doing, like maybe in order. Like what's
okay. So I guess we'll start at the home component.
Yeah, why don't you start at why don't you start at the front end? And then explain from there.
So this is a class. Home component. These are variables. This is the type of it. It can be anything. Type any. You can come up with your own. Like I could have done first name string, and it would only take that parameter.
Okay.
It would only take a
data.
parameter named called first name.
Yep. So temp data. This will throw. I guess that will not throw an error because it has more. So if I try to assign this a variable, say temp data equals, say, an object called test. It won't like that because test string does not exist on my last name. It doesn't exist on that object I'm trying to add to it. That's why it says test string is not assignable to type, last name, first name,
Do you understand what
job.
JSON is, Seth?
No.
Okay.
Fantastic.
No. So pull that back up again. Undo that. Yeah. So see how test and name. So you've got there's a format to it. Like you've got test,
Uh-huh.
which is kind of like the variable name, and then colon is like your equals operator, and the name is the data. So
Yep.
then JSON format is um, think of that expanded to multiple lines. So like you'll go to the next line, and you'll have another thing like first name colon, and then you put the name, and then last name colon, and then put the name. So it's kind of like
Bunch of variables in their data.
and it's all wrapped together by basically a
An
class without method.
object.
Yeah, it's an object. It's a class without methods. It's just its purpose is to be able to do like is just store that data, and then you use it to
Awesome.
access it. So what I think Sam you were saying was when you create say member name and you assign it any, you could assign it like say last name inside and that last name variable is inside of a JSON object, right?
Yeah, here's an example. CST Sam Bill. So this doesn't complain because it has all the required parameters. So if I take out job, this will complain because it has the parameters. But if I made job optional, it'll be fine with it.
Oh.
So I can make certain parameters optional if they aren't sent or not.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's basically like last name, first name, and job are just parameters, and you have the data type next to the variable
Yep.
name. That makes sense.
Yep. Pretty awesome. Okay, so then on page load it calls our get method, which calls our backend, which is this method. It's our get mapping.
Yes. So the URL is pointed towards the back end?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
It's our API call.
Okay.
If I really wanted to, I can do at request. Like if you usually do this when you want to put on common methods, this is kind of best practice. We could do like /board or something. And now if I go back here, this would have a board in front of it. And then board. Did I spell board wrong? BOA.
That is correct.
Oh, I can't do that. I have to create up my config. My bad. So I need a config to put that in the class, which I am not doing that. So you get the point though. You can have request mapping to like encapsulate all this. So if you had like a country, you can put request mapping country, and then down here you can put like United States, and then you can put Mexico and stuff like that to like kind of organize it. So then after that, we get our return data, which turns us a list of maps. So I had to put as any because I did not create an object for data. So the as any lets me override that, cast this to whatever this is.
Okay.
That's what the as any does. So then in our home component HTML, I kind of explained ng4. It calls our ACM app member, which takes in an input of data, and on card click we pull that event that this outputs.
And that's when you click on the name, right?
Yep. So when the name gets clicked, it emits this data,
So
and
that
then
method is called, right?
yep, this method gets called,
Okay.
and then it gets put here. So this basically catches it,
Catches
and
the
then
event.
we can yeah, it catches the event, and then we can do whatever we want with it here.
Okay. And the event contains like the data, right?
It can contain anything. I can put anything here.
Okay.
Girl does not contain. So then in our HTML, this gets created to build out the format that we saw, kind of. Oh. Alright, hold on. I know why this didn't work.
Sam got distracted.
Okay, so we'll run this again. Okay, first page. Okay, we're good. It works now. I didn't reload my Spring project.
You said you can click on one of those names?
Here?
Yeah.
If I click on Luke Langle, it'll emit this
Oh,
event.
and then yeah, that's what your emitter was doing, was putting into the log.
Yep.
Okay,
You
that makes
can
sense. Can you make stuff happen on screen based on the click? Or is this
let me... Yes, so I can do like
like just
event.
have the names and then when you click it have like a then you have like more data of them pop up or something? I don't know.
I can do event data. Event. And I can go to my HTML. We'll make it a header so we can actually see. Dot first name. Oh, it's not defined. No, it's name. What?
You, the big dumb.
I agree.
Random question. Is this being recorded?
Yes, it is.
Oh, awesome.
I will upload it right after we're done.
Sweet.
I found problem, Seth. Div.
What is it?
It's not defined, so I have to do ngif name.
What's not defined? Name?
It's literally an if statement in HTML. It's awesome.
Oh, that's disgusting.
That is awesome. What do you mean? So then it'll only display it. Okay, seriously?
It did display something.
Only
It
display
did.
error.
Error.
Display
Event.
Sam is dumb.
I agree, dude. That's not working. That's the only thing. That's what I like about front end too. Is you can debug it, which is nice. You click on that.
I didn't know that Google Chrome had a debugging option for.
It's awesome. Event. Puts in job. Name. It's right there. I don't know what you mean. You're not defined.
Name it any.
That's not how this works.
You have to do this dot event data dot name?
No, it's in
No?
the same file, so it knows it's there.
You don't know something.
I know, right?
What tipped you off, genius?
Event data.
The name is undefined.
I guess I could do this. Called cancer equals true.
I mean, you're not lying.
I hate you. do you mean? I put an NGF. False. Oh. Okay.
There you go.
I don't know what you
Played.
just did.
Yay.
Yay!
Would you what? What? Oh, okay, that's really cool.
I know, right?
So you just did what
Mind
Seth
blowing.
told you to do, and you used when you mouse over or click the thing to change a thing in the program?
So
Yep.
you changed the web page, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Isn't that sweet? My mind was blown.
I don't know how to feel about the fact that there are if statements in HTML. Like, I don't
It's
know if
an
I should
NGF. It's awesome.
I don't know if I should feel hurt or just disappointed or like back me up on this,
What is
Jacob.
that?
Like,
What is NGIF?
It's an if statement. So if this is true, it'll execute this code.
It'll show that HTML part.
So
It'll put that straight.
you clicking on a name sets cancer to true.
Yeah.
yeah, where does
Remember?
it do that?
It runs this output.
Nice. Okay,
Ah,
cool.
that's right.
So it
Is
sets
that
cancer to true.
is that if statement part like native part of HTML, or is that part of Angular?
It's part of Angular.
Gotcha.
That makes more
That's
sense.
what's nice about it. React does not have this.
And that is reason enough to know that Angular is better than React. I have never used React, but if it doesn't have if statements everywhere, then it is not good.
All right, Mr.
True.
If statement.
That is just truth. I don't know.
But yeah, that concludes everything.
All right.
Unless you guys have any questions.
I understand it better than I did, so that's good.
Hey, you got to know how to communicate with the backend, database, and call it from the front end.
Sweet.
You're golden.
I'll be able to make $1 million now.
I know who to call when I need someone to do this for me.
Yay!
Luke. His name is Luke.
His
No,
name
not
is-
me.
his name is
I don't know how to
Colonel
do the
Butler.
backend stuff.
I guess I guys can show you.
Can you show us some marks?
I will.
Yeah.
You gotta do it faster than normal though, because normally you explain it and show it and it takes like a half hour.
Explain
No,
it in an
I'm
hour.
literally just showing
In
it.
depth.
It is very pretty though.
I don't think you've seen the latest one, Josh.
You updated it?
Mm-hmm. That looks
What?
awesome.
He's a workaholic. After he gets home from work, he does more work.
That's
I get home
disgusting.
from work and I'm supposed to do linear, and like that's enough right there.
Well, that's you have to do that.
Well,
He does-
my point
he
is,
does.
I don't want to do it.
Yes, I feel it. And I don't.
Luke, you remember these auth guards?
Yeah, those look familiar.
Yeah, I actually understood what they're actually doing now.
Is it for protecting passwords?
It's kind of like page access more. So,
Oh,
like
Jacob Jacob will appreciate the fact that you store your passwords in plain text.
Oh
I
boy.
don't-
Wait, what?
I do not now.
Oh, good.
False, my friend.
Okay, that's
I
good.
made a very nice hash.
Okay.
Where's it
Originally, he was saving them in plain text in SQL.
Where is it at?
Show me to function.
Like 1,000.
Do 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 do.
Oh, bam.
Ah, okay, that's much better
Beautiful.
than plain text. Thank you.
Fight me.
When he
I just
showed
saw
me
Bob
that
Butler.
originally and it was plain text, I was like, "You cannot do that. You have to change that." And he's like, "I don't see the problem."
I don't see that.
Yeah. But this auth guard goes off of your JWT,
And what is
So-
JWT?
JSON Web Token.
So it's a token that allows you to do something.
Yeah, so your JWT stores data, or it can, I guess, and it has an expiration date that I go off of, and that's what this is valid token checks. So if you don't have a valid token, it'll route you to the login page. Otherwise, it'll route you to the page you typed in.
So it's sort of like how Amazon or something will log you out after a set amount of time if you haven't like interacted or something.
Correct.
Sweet.
Or if you have the page and you walked away for a long time and try to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
Good.
But I'll need to take this off for now.
Oh, were we still gonna do that project that we were talking about, Sam?
Which one?
The one for ACM.
Sure,
I
that'd be
like
awesome.
I'm looking at the votes, and I'd say that you beat out Dr. Thomas as chief software officer. So.
So here's what Mark's looks like
15.
around it, Josh.
Oh wow, that's a lot different.
I put a hover. It's pretty awesome.
Fancy.
Then like these jump
Yeah.
up. It's pretty sweet.
So this is like it's like an employee website type thingy.
Yep. Regionals.
Regional
Even
manager.
Kevin, he's the VP, has access to it.
Mm.
So what are they using this for?
Right now it's vacations and budgets. And it also keeps track of who's in their system. So
You log into
hiring.
other people?
Yeah, I have access to their stuff.
What's his password?
I have no idea.
What's your dad's password?
That's Bob's password.
I hate you. So yeah, right now I don't have an auth guard on it, but I'll show you what the auth guard does.
Wait, all I gotta do is tweet anonymous and tell them you've been doing some bad things, and they will hack your thing.
Yeah, so since I don't have a valid GWT, if I try to go to the home page, it'll route me back to login.
Oh, fancy.
And then it'll do vice versa. If you have a valid GWT and you try to log in again, it'll just route you to the home page.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, that concludes my talk.
Sweet. Thank you, Sam.
All anonymous, he said racist comments.
I'm gonna stop the recording.
Twitter